This is CBC Here and Now.
Atlantic salmon numbers drop again.
2 consecutive years of declines of this magnitude are basically unheard of on the island.
Kane's quest is at full throttle in the Big Land.
Brad Gush's new milestone, the winningest skip in Brier history.
Well, a massive storm passing to our south will graze us with some showers and flurries, but winds are the big story over the next couple days, both here on land and offshore with the pack ice. The details are coming up.
To our top story now, the city of St. John's has voted to make some big changes to one of the more confusing intersections in St. John's, if not the country. Rawlins Cross, with its multiple traffic lights and yield signs and tangly, partially one-way streets. Not every driver in the capital has been able to figure this thing out.
And that's for sure. Now, council hopes that changes improve the situation and cut down on accidents. Here and Now's Jeremy Eaton is at the intersection, joining us now live. So, Jeremy, what's council planning on doing there?
So just moments ago, council approved to make some major changes here at what you said is probably one of the most unique intersections that you'll ever come across. They're going to get rid of some traffic lights. They're going to add more crosswalks. They're going to make some of that signage you just talked about bigger. But the biggest change that people are going to see is part of this road here behind us. That's Military Road. That's going to be closed to traffic altogether. Now, even trouble at the Rawlins Cross intersection. Yield signs and stop signs, and even if you obey the rules, you could still get hit. And that's exactly what happened to Mark Harvey. In 2013, a cab ran a yield sign writing off his car and forcing him to have surgery.
Not adhering to road signs is the biggest one I see. I mean, a yield sign or a right-of-way sign are pretty straightforward to obey, and it just seems like people aren't paying attention. Well, if there's anything that can be done with this intersection to make it safer and prevent high-impact collisions like that, I think the city should pursue it.
And the council agrees with Mr. Harvey. Now, most of the councillors voted for this, but it should be noted that Mayor Danny Breen, councillors Wally Collins and Jamie Korab voted against it. Now, they also brought up tonight at council that over a 5-year period between 2017 and 2017, there were 120 accidents here. 4 involving pedestrian, 1 involving a cyclist, 29 involving vehicles, and 86 involving property. Now, Councillor Dave Lane brought this up at council, and here's what he had to say about what they're calling a test project.
I think it's really important that council move more towards what is called evidence-based decision-making wherever possible. And what a pilot project is a physical test of real-time changes to an intersection in this case, to say, how did it work before? So we'll measure that. How does it work with some changes in place, changes in the way traffic can flow? And then afterwards saying, okay, how did that go? Is it worth doing this from now on? Maybe just keeping some of the adjustments? But we'll know for sure from evidence that says, here's how this worked, as opposed to just going based on emotion, concern, or theory.
So, while this is being called a roundabout, it won't look like your traditional roundabout, as you're literally going to drive around Rawlins Cross. Now, as for when this is going to be implemented, council and city staff don't know for sure yet, but it will be sometime this summer, and they're not really sure how long this project is going to last. But in a few months, people are going to know large changes here at one of the most famous intersections in Newfoundland and Labrador. Reporting live in St. John's, I'm Jeremy Eaton for Here and Now.
A man from the Foxtrap area of CBS has died in an apparent hunting accident. The man was shot in the upper body while hunting on Route 91 near Collinette on Saturday. He died by the time police and paramedics arrived. Police say the incident seems to be an accident, but they are investigating the shooting with the help of the chief medical examiner.
This is the result of a weekend crash that sent 3 people to hospital in the west end of St. John's. It happened Saturday evening at the intersection of Columbus Drive and New Pennywell Road. RNC says all 3 were seriously injured. There's no word tonight on their condition. It's believed the vehicle was westbound when it struck the utility pole.
A 61-year-old woman was killed Friday evening as a result of a vehicle-pedestrian accident in the west end of St. John's. It happened shortly after 6:30 p.m. A portion of Brookfield Road was closed for a number of hours while police investigated. Sources tell CBC the woman was struck by 2 separate vehicles, but police have yet to confirm this detail. The woman died as a result of her injuries.
Emotions are running high in Labrador City today as unionized steelworkers consider whether they will vote to strike. There are approximately 1,400 steelworkers at IOC's iron ore pellet operation in Labrador City. Talks with management began in December, but the contract expired at the end of February with no deal. The union says pensions are a major sticking point.
A 2-tier pension, which would be for all new hires. They would have a pension that would be equivalent to about 1/3 of what we got today. And, you know, the other sad part about the pension is that right now we have a provision that you can retire with 30 years of service. And some of our members will have to work an extra 4 years in order to be able to retire.
The union has a lot more to say on this strike vote, and we'll hear that in about 30 minutes.
Some great news for Corner Brook's annual toy drive. A Good Samaritan is giving the drive some much-needed storage space. The Firefighters Union, the group behind the drive, was evicted from its space at the city's Civic Centre earlier this year. But the union said renting another spot would mean less money and toys, of course, for kids at Christmas time. Now it seems the toys will soon be stored at a new, undisclosed building in the city. The group involved says it's not looking for any praise for the donated space and has asked not to be named. The union's expected to make the move next week. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls heads to Labrador this week. The hearings are being held right across Canada with testimony and families and survivors. The commission will be in Happy Valley Goose Bay on Wednesday and Thursday. There are several ways people can speak to the commission, either in private or public testimony, through sharing circles or artistic expressions. The inquiry is trying to get to the root of why there is so much violence against Indigenous women in this country.
Scientists at the Department of Fisheries and Oceans are sounding the alarm about the state of salmon stocks in this province. Researchers released the results of the 2017 stock assessment, which show the salmon population at an all-time low. Here now's Carolyn Stokes reports.
Just when researchers thought salmon stocks in this province couldn't get any worse, they did.
As scientists, yeah, we are deeply concerned. Yes, yeah. It's just, we've never seen anything like this. 2016 was a low year. We were sort of thought maybe that was it. That was the bottom, but then 2017 turned around and was worse than 2016.
Of the 19 rivers DFO monitored last year, 80% show a salmon population decline of more than 30% compared to the past 5 to 6 years.
So 2 consecutive years of declines of this magnitude are basically unheard of on the island. Certainly not in the years since the commercial fishery moratorium.
And that was nearly 3 decades ago. But today, 60% of the stocks on the island and 75% in Labrador are in the critical zone, which means there's a greater risk of irreversible damage to the population. Jeff Vino says part of the problem is that only 5 out of 100 juvenile salmon return to rivers after migrating to the ocean.
That's where the loss is taking place, is the juveniles going out are not returning. So the mortality at sea is where we're losing our fish.
Researchers don't know what's causing the loss, but last August, low salmon numbers drove DFO to ban retention fishing, so anglers had to release every salmon they caught. Researchers say a return to that ban could help increase the salmon population by 80% for that season and counter the steady decline.
The trend seems to be downwards. When we look at the bottoms, we keep hitting lower and lower bottoms. So we may see a recovery in 2018, we may not. The long-term outlook seems to be in a declining direction.
Vino says they weren't asked to make recommendations, only to assess the stocks. A decision about management of the 2018 season is expected in May. Carolyn Stokes, CBC News, St. John's.
To the United States now, where people along the northeast coast are cleaning up after a powerful storm on the weekend. This was the scene Saturday in Massachusetts. Areas from Maryland to Maine were under flood warnings after high tides inundated roads, snapped trees, and knocked out power to more than 2 million homes and businesses. At least 8 people were killed by falling trees or branches.
Well, some incredible pictures there for sure. And that same storm that, of course, really hammered the northeast U.S. Now tracking south of our neck of the woods. And as we take a look at some of those gusts right now, 94 in Cape Race, 70 in Lawrencetown and Burgeo, some offshore gusts obviously in the 90 to 100 plus kilometer per hour range. Even Cape Race has been gusting over 100 kilometers per hour. This low will be slowly tracking to the east over the next couple days. Winds are going to be the main story, especially along the Avalon and the Burin Peninsulas, where we're going to be seeing gusts in the 70, 80, 90 kilometer per hour range. But for southern areas of the Avalon and the Burin, especially through Tuesday, some gusts in the 100 kilometer per hour range. A breezy day for everybody right across the island, and it's more northeasterly, so that'll obviously be having an impact on that pack ice. We'll talk more about that coming up. As we roll into the Wednesday time period, those winds will finally start to ease, but they're still from a northerly direction. Until we get there, wind warnings again all the way from Cape Race across to Burgeo and Ramia. We'll have more on your complete weather situation coming up in just a few minutes. Debbie and Anthony.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, Canes Quest racers are flying across Labrador. The hardcore long-distance endurance snowmobile race set out from Labrador City last week.
Injuries and mechanical troubles have put some teams out of the race. Others are still beating their way through Labrador and the wilderness as this drama unfolds. Here now's Jacob Barker has that story.
Here at the main checkpoint, the anticipation is clear.
It's good to see something going right there around here, eh? Especially across Labrador.
Proud to showcase their community to racers from all over the world.
Seeing our beautiful home and our Nunat Selwood, and they get to see everything that lots of hunters and trappers experience and how we travel, and pretty cool. Like,
working together, teams 88 and 22 were the first to check in here. Team 22 won the last race. They love it coming into Nain.
I said to Andrew coming in across the bay, I said, there's more people that greet us in Nain than there was at the finish line last year.
Yeah, they should contract out the finish line festivities to the town of Nain. They'd get it done. Oh, yeah.
The race for some has come to an end. Team 17's ended north of Churchill Falls. Dave Dumaresque ending up with a broken hip. Team 50 stopped to help him into the chopper.
You don't pass anybody like that if you know them, and if you come up on somebody, you have to deal with the situation, and you don't take a bit of time, you lose.
O'Brien detached his cornea a week before the race began, but he decided to do it anyways.
Things worked out good, and I had approval that I could go on the race, so I'm here. And after all me and Murray put in this, it wouldn't be an easy to give up.
Good to see this place again.
All the teams but two made it to Nain. For this team from Nunavik, it's a warm feeling.
It's nice to see that, you know, it's uplifting and stuff. And some people talking to us in our mother language, so it's pretty cool to hear that during the race.
With a mandatory 12-hour layover here, it's a chance to get some much-needed rest. Weary competitors were coming in at all hours.
It is, yes. Yeah, I just took a couple up there and they said they're going to eat and going back to bed. They're beat.
Way to go, 94! Way to go! Way to go, 94! Way to go!
Team Ivek, the only team for Nunatsiavut, came in at around midnight to a hero's welcome. What's it like to be able to roll into Nain?
Good. Yeah. I didn't do it last time, but I did it this time.
And the last to come in after a full 24 hours of riding, Team Nord Côtier.
Only one cylinder for the last 300 kilometers.
At 71, Reginald Tremblay is the oldest competitor.
Very good. He's 71 years old, and I'm proud of him. He's a high thing. He's in better shape than me.
Thank you.
Everything's quiet here now. The racers are on their way to the southerlymost point of the race, Lanse-Claire, and they're making some really good time. In fact, organizers say that they could be seeing a finish to the race one full day early on Thursday instead of Friday. Jacob Barker, CBC News, Nain.
He did just a great job on that story, but people don't know is that Jacob is actually the fastest guy because he actually has to get to each spot before the actual snowmobiles get there. What an incredible race.
It is an incredible race, and what kind of condition they must be in. It truly is an endurance event.
Absolutely.
You can get ice cream or you can get creamed at Rollins Cross. Coming up, why the City of St. John's wants to change one of Canada's wackiest intersections.
Well, back to Rawlins Cross now, one of the most challenging areas in the city to drive through. A couple of hours ago, the city approved a traffic pilot project for the area. And to get the details, I met up with the local Ward 2 councillor, Hope Jamieson. Okay, Hope Jamieson, Rawlins Cross, one of the wackiest intersections in the province, if not the country. Why change it?
Well, because we think we can do better. I think there's a general perception among local experienced drivers that there's nothing wrong. And to be fair, it is a thing that we all do every day. We're used to this now. But there have been 120 accidents at this intersection in the last 6 years, and most of those were T-bone accidents where someone ran a red light. So there's a problem here, and we're trying to find a solution.
All right. The roundabout is the proposed solution. How big a project is that?
So it comes from an existing budget. We have a budget every year for traffic calming measures. Roundabout is actually not quite an appropriate term. It's a circular traffic pattern. So everything that exists here already stays in situ. The buildings will remain as they are. So what we'll do is restrict access to all but emergency vehicles and pedestrians through Military Road and reroute traffic around the buildings that exist here to make it safer. And so a T-bone accident is impossible in a situation where it's a circular traffic pattern.
Right.
So
the traffic will be going in the same direction.
Exactly,
right.
Yeah.
Some concerns from pedestrians in the area that that kind of formation makes it difficult for people on foot. Do you buy that?
Well, I think that as it exists, the cross leaves quite a lot to be desired from a pedestrian point of view. I use this intersection quite a lot myself, and near misses are quite common. 3 pedestrians and 1 cyclist struck in that same 6-year period. So we were looking at the accident data when we were considering this change. And so what we'll be doing is installing better signage. We're looking at putting road markings in to make it more obvious where the crosswalks will be. And it puts more autonomy in the hands of pedestrians. So rather than seeing a walk signal and going without looking too much, you assess the situation and decide if it's safe to cross or not.
Have you met people from the mainland of the United States who've asked you anything about, hey, what's this thing over here, Rawlins Cross?
I actually lived on Prescott Street for a time, and it was a real common question that we'd get from people coming up the street, like, what is going on here? How do I use this intersection? And so for those of us who have grown up in St. John's and learned to drive here, we take this as a given, but actually that kind of autopilot is something that we need to fight against from a safety standpoint. So what we want drivers to be paying attention. We need people to be vigilant when they're driving in terms of looking for pedestrians, making sure the way is safe. So I think that this will be a positive change in that regard.
Hope Jamieson, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. What is a tricky place, isn't it?
Tangly. I know a lot of people say they just avoid it completely. It's just too risky.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, we'll see what happens with the pilot.
The sign would kind of look like this, right, if they actually had it right. So be interesting to see how they make the changes.
Yeah, the pilot project is set to go. Skip Brad Gujou sets a big record at the Briar. Find out.
This weather forecast has been brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. 5,000 kilometers of groomed trails are waiting to be explored. Embrace winter today.
On the weather, lots of wind and other stuff of concern.
Yeah, ice, of course. The northeast winds all weekend long really picked up as the weekend went along, and windy again today, windy again tomorrow. And so as we were talking about last week, it's the pack ice that's been pushing back towards the island. Have a look. Here's a map that kind of updates the situation. Again, the oranges and reds are the most concentrated ice, and you can see as we zoom in here where that ice is starting to push down now into Trinity Bay. This is as of yesterday, by the way. This was taken by a radar image from space, but you can see where that ice is starting to trickle down into Trinity Bay. Bonavista Bay, when we showed this map last week, was ice-free. Bonavista Bay, now lots of ice in the mix there. Up towards the north coast, the Bay of Exploits, you can see where that ice is filling in as well. Couple of spots there. White Bay filling up, as is the Strait of Belle Isle, where that does cut off. But by the way, you can, if you just Google Environment Canada sea ice maps, these are all accessible online if you want to check them out. Again, no question and no surprise that those bays are starting to fill up as that northeast wind has been relentless and will continue to be so over the next couple of days. Sustained winds near 30 kilometers per hour in St. John's, 50 in St. Lawrence, 43 in through Bonavista. Now for the winds, seeing some gusts in the 94 kilometer per hour range in Cape Race, though last hour it was gusting over 100 kilometers per hour. And in case you missed it, there's a wind warning in effect from Cape Race in the southern Avalon right across to Burgeo. This northeast wind is actually a pretty favorable one for you folks along the south coast and the west coast, where temperatures are mild. 4 degrees, hearing from you folks in Burgeo on a daily basis. A beautiful day again today, and up the west coast as well. On the plus side, 1 in Happy Valley Goose Bay, Labrador City around the freezing mark as well. As we back things out, area of high pressure, that blocking high setup continues to the north, and that's why this storm is passing to our south, and it is a big one. In case you missed it off the top of the show, this is the storm that brought all of the damage and unfortunately some deaths in the northeast U.S. It is now tracking to our south. Not much in the way of precipitation. A couple of flurries and showers mixing in over the southern Burin and the southern Avalon through the day on Tuesday. Again, most of the models keeping the bulk of that activity to the south. Any showers and flurries will be pretty light, but there is the possibility there. Elsewhere, it's with those northeasterly winds, the chance of the onshore flurries that continue, much the same that we've been seeing over the last couple of days. -1 to -3 to start the day tomorrow. Note those winds gusting 70 to 80 kilometers per hour for the Avalon, including St. John's tomorrow morning, and that will continue through the day. Gusts near 60 for the west coast, -6 to -10 to start in Labrador City and Happy Valley Goose Bay. There's the best chance of some precip through the day tomorrow. And again, those winds will be relentless. Temperatures near the 1 to 2 degree range for the northeast, 2 to 4 for the southwest. Flurry chances as far west and south as the Humber Valley and Corner Brook tomorrow. Better chance, of course, along the coast, but certainly some chances of flurries for inland parts of Labrador as well. Note as we roll through the Wednesday time period, the winds starting to ease a little bit. Now we're talking about gusts in the 50 to 60 kilometer per hour range. A little more sun for the west coast on Wednesday, even more so than what we'll have tomorrow, and a pretty nice day shaping up in Labrador on Wednesday as well, with temperatures in the -4 range for inland areas. And then as we roll into the Thursday time period, winds a bit of a shift here from northeast to a little lighter and a little more northerly, and that should allow a little more in the way of some sunshine as an area of high pressure does sink down into the region. And so Thursday looks like a pretty nice day. Certainly the lightest winds and a bit more sun in the mix for central and eastern Newfoundland is what I'm mentioning specifically, and -4 back on the menu for Labrador. This all changes as we roll into the Friday and weekend time period. Could see a system. That's the best way of putting it. Coming in, we'll talk more about that in the long range. There's a tease for you.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Well, you think synchronized swimming looks tough? Try synchronized skating. More than 800 skaters of all ages and abilities performed to a sold-out crowd at the Jack Byrne Arena in Torbay over the weekend.
It was for the Provincial Synchronized Skating Championships. The competition kicked off Friday and featured 50 teams from 12 skating clubs across the province.
Wow.
Great crowd there.
Staying with other athletics, more than 4,000 basketball fans in St. John's saw something truly amazing over the weekend.
Yeah. Local star Carl English set a new National Basketball League of Canada record Saturday night. He scored, get this, 58 points in the game against the KW Titans. Here is the celebration in the Edge dressing room after the game at Mile 1.
The St. John's won 127 to 117, with English scoring nearly half of his team's points that night. Devin Sweetney held the record until Saturday night, sinking 56 points for Moncton back in 2013.
And congratulations are pouring in for Brad Guzhu. Yes, he is undefeated at the Brier, but that's not why he entered the record books today.
Well, this afternoon, after beating the Northwest Territories, he became the skip with the most wins in Brier history, 114. Now, Glenn Howard, let him cheer a little bit there. Glenn Howard has more total wins with 168, but not all of those happened when he was skip. Interestingly, Guzhu and Glenn Howard's brother Russ teamed up back in 2006, as we all know, to win gold at the Olympics.
Guzhu is just 37 years old. He played in his first Brier in 2003 and has represented the province in just about every national championship since then.
Yeah, it's quite something, eh? Well, last year, Team Guzhu finally captured the Brier in that dramatic fashion right here in St. John's in front of a hometown crowd at Mile 1.
A lot of concessions on the table, which don't make any sense to me.
Negotiations are not going well between the steelworkers and IOC. Workers at IOC's mining operation in Labrador City are in the middle of a strike vote. Voting began this morning and will run until tomorrow afternoon. Workers at IOC's mining operation in Labrador City are in the middle of a strike vote. Voting began this morning and will run until tomorrow afternoon. About 1,400 steel workers with Local 5795 are eligible to vote. Their contract with the Iron Ore Company of Canada expired just days ago at the end of February. Ron Thomas is the president of the Steelworkers Union in Labrador City, and that's where we've reached him. Well, Ron Thomas, what specifically prompted this strike vote?
Well, Debbie, we've been negotiating since the end of December, and we tried to get a fair contract with our members, and the company had a lot of concessions on the table, which don't make any sense to me. Why they would be going ahead with concessions at a time when the price of ore is high, and we got mines in the area. Wabash Mines is starting to rehire. We got Takora Mines, which is Wabash Mines, but you got Alderon, Takamat starting up, and Bloom Lake in the area. So I mean, there's lots of positive stuff around here, and it's unfortunate that the company is coming after our benefits now.
Okay, well, let's talk about those concessions that don't sit well with you. What are they?
Well, first of all, they want to, if we have any member that's off sick for any reason at all, whether they take a sick day or they're off on medical within their pay period, and when they come back, they decide to work overtime. The company is taking away their overtime pay, and they're going to make them work straight time hours until they make up their actual hours that they missed.
I understand pensions are a big sticking point for you. How so?
Well, it's one of the biggest problems that we got is because the pension, they want a two-tier pension, which would be for all new hires. They would have a pension that would be equivalent to about 1/3 of what we got today. And, the other sad part about the pension is that right now we have a provision that you can retire with 30 years of service. And some of our members will have to work an extra 4 years in order to be able to retire.
Now, it's not unusual, as you know, for companies to go after pension reform these days. Is there any room for compromise on pensions?
Well, Debbie, like I just mentioned, at a time when we should be making improvements, we're not asking for the world. We just want our fair share. This company is making big profits, and they just not too long ago they talked about some production records that were being broken, and it's unfortunate that we don't go backwards. You always try to improve, and to make a two-tier pension right now, I mean that leaves your kids and everybody else to come back with less of a pension that we would receive today. I mean, it's just not right.
Now, speaking of money, U.S. President Donald Trump says he'll impose a 25% trade tariff on steel, a 10% tariff on aluminum. How would that impact operations in Labrador City?
Well, I don't think it would impact it. Maybe it would later on down the line, but most of our product is being shipped to Europe and China. And I know that our international president and our national director has been fighting to get Canada exempt from this tariff. So I don't think it's a huge issue, and I don't think that's the reason why the company is coming after concessions, because the company has been after the concessions prior to the announcement that Donald Trump made.
What is your sense of how the strike vote will go?
Well, we had our first meeting this morning at 9 o'clock, and I can tell you that a lot of our members are extremely disappointed with the company, and they're angry, and it's just not right. I mean, at a time when we should be working together to improve production and improve our benefits and to keep everything going smooth, this company comes out and decides to take stuff away, and I can tell you our members are not very happy about it.
Ron Thomas, will keep an eye on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
There's a new boss at jails right across the province. Don Roach started on the job several weeks ago, but it's not exactly a new role for him. The new superintendent of prisons came out of retirement to take on the top job, and he sat down with Here and Now's Ariana Kelland to talk about the new challenges in old facilities.
Yes, I was very nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was doing there, really, at 23 years old.
When Don Roach started as a correctional officer, it was common practice to hand out packs of smokes and a razor to each inmate. That was 1982. Times have certainly changed since then.
We are faced daily with mental health challenges. We are faced daily with incompatibility issues that are coming into the institution from the street.
Her Majesty's Penitentiary and the other correctional facilities Roach oversees are rapidly changing. The majority of inmates are racked with mental illness, addictions, or both. Correctional officers now have to act as police officers, breaking up violence. pharmacists making sure inmates are taking their meds correctly, and social workers to some of the most vulnerable. But if staff are waiting on a new prison to alleviate that, Roach says they better stop holding their breath.
The plan is not moving the penitentiary into the future. The plan is moving the staff into the future. So how do we get our staff to accept the fact that what we have, status quo, will probably get some makeovers and stuff, but there's going to be no major renovations to that facility. There's no major renovations to that facility that would help.
Roach says in his new role, he'll emphasize training for staff to deal with tough situations. And he says he's not forgetting the mental toll it takes on those officers. He says he's been there.
There's no one who's worked 30 years in corrections that can't recount numerous tragic incidents that happen inside. So if you're not talking about that, if you're not reaching out to someone, it's going to get you. It's going to come back on you. It's going to haunt you.
Pieces of history of when HMP was a very different beast. Don Roach remembers it. Now, out of retirement, he feels like the oldest rookie, but one who's ready for a new challenge. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
Up next, a look back at the life of political and social activist Clee Newhook.
Time to meet our young athlete of the day. He is 4-year-old Jaden Hatch. Jaden is from St. John's, and last summer was his first year with Waterford Valley playing T-ball.
And he played T-ball with the Sparrows team, and we hope it's not too long before you're back on the field again, Jaden.
Congratulations, Jaden, on being today's Young Athlete of the Day.
The weather update is brought to you by Belltone Hearing Service St. John's, helping the world hear better.
Yeah, T-ball seems so far away.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, only like 6 or 7 months.
Don't say that.
Yeah, that's kind of my line. That everything's always 6 or 7 months away, and then it's always a nice welcome settle. It only took 3 or 4 months. Anyway, talking about ice, and it's always cool when you post something and then have people say, hey, you were talking about ice.
Oh, yeah.
Just FYI, of course, I was showing the map of the ice packing into
there it is.
northern Newfoundland, but getting a heads up on Twitter from Woodsy, who says, by the way, yes, Woodsy, who says, by the way, the Coast Guard is having to help Marine Atlantic get ashore in North Sydney. So, of course, this is the ice that's packing in there, but have a look at the ice that's packing in. Again, not much through the Cabot Strait, but you think about the northeasterly direction of those winds, and so it's all packing into North Sydney there. And thanks to Arlene, who has some sort of connection to Woodsy, aboard the Marine Atlantic
What is that
ship.
supposed to mean?
Yeah. Arlene is aboard the Marine Atlantic ship and says they can't dock in North Sydney, and here comes the Coast Guard for help.
Wow. To the rescue.
To the rescue, indeed. And just a quick check on that Marine Atlantic site, by the way, the 11:30 crossing back to Port aux Basques has been canceled tonight. Not sure if that is ice-related or wind-related. Could be one or the other. Either way, thanks to Woodsy for the heads up there. Now, again, it's all thanks to these driving northeasterlies, the pack ice to the north coast and down into the North Sydney region, and that will continue over the next couple days as this big storm tracks to our south, but will continue to bring that northeasterly wind. We'll see some showers mixed with flurries for the southern Avalon and the Burin to Morrill. We'll see more onshore flurries for the north coast up into southeastern parts of Labrador, and just that relentless northerly flow is going to keep temperatures pretty much around the freezing mark for most of the north and east, and a little bit warmer and a little more sun for you folks along the south and west coast, and again in Labrador as well. Now, as we take a look at the long range, give you a bit of a teaser there before, here's the area of high pressure that will continue to block, but it will move off to the north a little bit, and that's going to allow a system to move in from the south. Lots of different ideas on how this is all going to play out, especially because we're talking still a few days. This is Friday into Saturday. This is the Euro model idea, which brings that low in on the leading edge. Pretty good heavy band of snow, perhaps some mixing across the southern and eastern parts of Newfoundland, and then that all rolls to the north with more mixing in behind for Sunday into Monday before that system finally departs. Again, couple of different solutions and ideas on how this will all play out, but it does look like some mixed precip and some wind for the Friday into Saturday, Sunday time period across the island. So we're going to be keeping a very close eye on that over the next couple of days. Not much of a roller coaster in terms of temperatures. We're hovering around that freezing mark certainly through the next 4, and then it looks like even through the weekend as that next system tracks in. Labrador, very, very nice stretch. His Cairns Quest looks like it'll come to a record early end thanks to that nice weather, and really nothing big brewing on the menu there. Perhaps a little bit of snow into the latter half of the weekend. That's your forecast to now. Debbie?
Tributes continue to pour in for Clee Newhook. The longtime political and social activist died of cancer this weekend at the age of 74. Lorraine Michael called him a vibrant person with a quiet strength. Newhook led the provincial NDP from 1989 to 1992. He was an Anglican minister who studied at the University of Oxford in England. After he returned to the province, he worked with the Ocean Ranger Families Foundation. Newhook wrote books about growing up in rural Newfoundland and had a strong love for Newfoundland ponies. He helped start the Wooden Boat Museum in Winterton and served on the 2006 Electoral Boundaries Commission. Newhook leaves behind a wide circle of family and friends, including his wife of 50 years, Deborah, and 2 children, Rebecca and Matthew. A celebration of his life will be held on Saturday. In national and international news tonight, 2 Canada Post employees in Edmonton say a culture of sexual harassment festered because the Crown Corporation did not put a stop to the behavior of a supervisor when it came to light. José Saint-Ange has the story.
Jessica and Hannah say their work life at the Edmonton mail processing plant was unbearable. CBC has given the women pseudonyms and distorted their voices. They risk losing their jobs since Canada Post made them sign a confidentiality agreement when the sexual harassment allegations were investigated. By sharing their story, they hope to change the plant's work culture. Jessica says her supervisor's behavior became more and more inappropriate over time, and management ignored her complaints.
The supervisor would start saying sexual comments about my body parts,
sexual comments about things that he would like to do to me.
By last March, a total of 4 women had complained to the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. A Canada Post investigator found the complaints were truthful, but bizarrely also found the supervisor hadn't engaged in sexual harassment.
I was appalled by the fact that they agreed with what occurred. They believed what I was saying, but they opted to keep him employed there.
Canada Post management allowed the supervisor to return to work alongside the women who complained. The local president of the union, Nancy Dosworth, was shocked.
It sends the wrong message totally to people that are bullies, abusers, harassers, to return them to the same workplace, to the same people that they victimized.
Last December, 2 more complaints were investigated and substantiated against the very same supervisor. Hannah and Jessica have not seen him at work since. In a statement, Canada Post says that the complaints were taken seriously and action was taken to resolve the issue. The corporation wouldn't say what the action was, citing privacy reasons. José Saintonge, CBC News, Edmonton.
A First Nation in Northern Ontario is renewing its call for Thunder Bay's chief of police to resign. An independent review concludes police did not properly investigate the death of an Indigenous man back in 2015 and that racism and neglect of duty were to blame. Cameron McIntosh reports.
For the Thunder Bay Police Service is refusing to respond to demands for his resignation today after this report was made public this morning that concludes that members of the Thunder Bay Police acted with negligence, discrimination, and misconduct in their investigation into the 2015 death of an Indigenous man here in Thunder Bay. In October 2015, the body of Stacey Debungy was found floating here in Thunder Bay's McIntyre River. At the time, police concluded very quickly that the cause of death was not criminal. They went on the assumption that Debungy had passed out on the riverbank here and simply rolled into the river and drowned. That finding never sat well with his family. They hired a private investigator who found evidence that Debungy was in fact involved in an altercation here on the riverbank the night that he was last seen. Today's report from the Ontario Office of the Independent Police Review Director finds that the Thunder Bay Police Service didn't do a proper investigation here, witnesses were passed over, and that police acted with bias and discrimination due to Debungy's Indigenous status. Now, today, the Thunder Bay Police Service is not commenting on this report, citing privacy concerns for the 3 members that were involved in the investigation, saying that it will not comment until after those officers have hearings. The police board here in Thunder Bay is also saying the same thing. Meanwhile, Indigenous leadership here in Thunder Bay is calling for the chief of police to resign, saying that the Indigenous population of Thunder Bay has lost faith in the police service. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Thunder Bay.
A Saskatchewan man found himself stuck with a truck that isn't safe to drive. After an accident, his insurance company decided the vehicle was a total loss, but they went ahead and had it repaired anyway. As Rosa Marcatelli from Go Public Unit reports, those repairs went wrong.
This part here, it's all popped out. The impact is on that side of the vehicle, which shoved all the body this way.
Chris Scriven thought his pickup truck was headed for the scrapyard after it was labeled a total loss by his insurance company. Instead, the company, SGI, Saskatchewan's provincial insurance, sent it to one of its accredited auto body shops.
And then there's damages on the inside as well.
Scriven says it repaired the vehicle without telling him or getting his approval. That's against the rules.
SGI gave me a truck back with 1 working headlight, a bent frame, wheel alignment was way out, and it wouldn't even start.
That's the point of paying into insurance every month, and then just to basically have them tell you that you're on your own and doesn't matter that your vehicle needs repairs. We think it's done perfectly fine, even though it's not, and they basically shoo you out the door. It's not fair.
The couple took the truck to another mechanic who found another $9,000 in damage. That mechanic also warned them not to drive at long distances because it's structurally unsound. The insurance company tells Go Public the repairs were done to industry standards, but admits Scriven's case wasn't handled well, saying after the insurance adjuster determined the truck was a total loss, the auto body shop gave it a second look and decided it could fix the damage for less than the initial estimate, making the write-off unnecessary.
We definitely take
take ownership of the fact that there was a communications breakdown on our end. It's definitely a learning experience for us. This is a very rare and unusual case.
Steve McFadden has worked as a vehicle appraiser for decades and knows the importance of getting repairs done right. He says car owners need to know their rights when it comes to claims and repairs.
You have a right to take your car to a repair shop of your choice and have it repaired back to pre-loss condition.
After Go Public's inquiries, Scriven's insurance company agreed to reopen the claim, offering to write off the truck or pay him more than $21,000 to cover the cost of the additional repairs, lawyers' fees, and other out-of-pocket expenses. The couple chose the second option. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
There are new developments tonight in the case of accused serial killer Bruce McArthur. As always, we warn you that the details are disturbing. Toronto police say they have found the remains of a seventh murder victim. At the same time, they took an unusual step, releasing a photo of a dead man whom they cannot identify. Investigators want the public's help.
We're going to be releasing a photograph of an individual who we believe is an unidentified victim of Mr. McArthur. We have utilized numerous investigative techniques to identify this individual and so far have been unsuccessful. We have also shown the picture to numerous contacts within the community and have been unsuccessful. I do not want to release this picture and am doing so as a last resort.
Investigators say they believe the man was dead when the photo was taken. They're not saying where they got it, but police are calling it a key piece of evidence. Police also revealed the remains were recovered from a planter at a home where the remains of 6 other people were found. McArthur was employed by the homeowners as a landscaper.
U.S. President Donald Trump is linking proposed tariffs on steel and aluminum with Nafta negotiations. Trump says he won't lower the tariffs unless Canada will accept what he calls a new and fair agreement.
Mexico and really Canada want to talk about it. But if they aren't going to make a fair NAFTA deal, we're just going to leave it this way.
Trump is promising to impose tariffs of 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. The president's posturing is not going down well here in Canada or in Mexico. Both have said they should be excluded from any tariffs. Finance Minister Bill Morneau says the U.S. is changing the terms of NAFTA discussions. Negotiators are currently in Mexico City for the 7th round of talks. They've completed about 5 of the roughly 30 chapters that make up the free trade deal.
Our viewer picture of the day, both only shed in a lonely berg, but that berg will be joined by more as iceberg season officially begins. This is a very, very popular spot for iceberg hunting, if you can name it. We'll have the answer after the break.
I thought you said bird. Now I see it.
Twillingate.
Good guess, but no.
Oh.
Welcome back. There's icy
Sliding
conditions in the
into place.
studio, and so watch there. Yeah.
It's a good thing there was no ice.
Yeah.
Or you'd be curling mode.
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't trust myself to remember I do pride myself on knowing most locations, but this one I wanted to make sure I actually had on the text for the pictures. We zoom into the Bonavista Vista region and this lone shed in Maberly.
Maberly.
Yes, and Eric Abbott, of course, takes many shots. He's got a few on my Facebook page, and he'll be sharing a few more, I think, as iceberg season officially begins with all that ice offshore. Yes, it's going to be a hindrance. Already seeing reports Catalina Harbor boats are already stuck there since Sunday. So there's going to be more of that in the coming weeks, but more icebergs as well.
Right. Well, thanks very much, Eric. Kind of a lonely looking shot, but we appreciate seeing it. Thanks for being with us, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
Bye now.